let's talk about some properties of infinite limits. Suppose C and L are real numbers. If f and g are functions such that f has an infinite limit as x approaches c, but g has a finite limit as x approaches c. All right. If I add or subtract f plus g, you remember this is the same thing as doing the limits. All right. Infinity plus a little bit is still infinity. So if one of the limits I'm adding is infinite, then the entire thing is infinite. Similarly with the product rule, f times g will be positive infinity if g is positive, and this is positive infinity. We're going to then do the plus plus. And it's negative infinity, in this case, if f is positive and g is negative. Then the limit of the product will be negative infinity. Similarly, if we look at the quotient rule, the limit of x approaches c of g of x divided by f of x is 0. Now remember, g is some number L, but this limit right here is infinity. So the limit as x goes to c of this function will be 0 because the denominator gets really big and forces this whole thing down to 0. Now let's look at this one right here. I'm going to break this one up. The limit as x goes to 0. X goes to 0 of 1 is just 1. The limit as x goes to 0 of 1 over x squared, however, is positive infinity. So when I add 1 plus positive infinity, my answer is just positive infinity. Now let's look at this one right here. The limit as x goes to negative 1 to 1 from the left of x squared plus 1 divided by cotangent pi x. First, let me do the numerator first because it's pretty straightforward. The limit as x approaches 1 from the left of x squared plus 1 is 2. So that's just a number. That's my L. Now let's look at the limit as x approaches 1 from the left of cotangent pi x. You remember this is the same thing. It's a limit as x approaches 1 from the left. Cotangent is cosine pi x divided by sine of pi x. Now this simply goes to cosine of pi, which is negative 1, and this goes to sine of pi, which this goes to 0. So this whole thing goes to negative infinity. So this limit right here is going to be 2 divided by negative infinity, or 0, because the infinity is in the denominator. Now let's look at this one right here. The limit as x goes to 0 from the right of 3 cotangent of x. Now we pretty much just did this one, didn't we? What's the limit as x goes to 0 from the right of 3? Well, that's just 3. So now we need to look at the limit as x goes to 0 from the right of cotangent x. Now I'm going to break this back up. The limit as x goes to 0, cotangent is cosine x divided by sine of x. Now as we're coming in from the right, sine is positive on that side. And so this whole thing goes to plus infinity. So this answer up here is 3 divided by, or 3 times plus infinity. So the answer is just plus infinity.